Do you feel a secret shame in wanting more money? A sense of guilt as if wanting wealth makes you less spiritual, less good? Perhaps you've been taught that true virtue lies in simplicity, that desiring abundance somehow diminishes your soul's purity. What if I told you this belief is the greatest lie ever sold to humanity? What if the very opposite were true, that your reluctance to claim wealth is actually a denial of your divine nature, a rejection of the sacred impulse that drives all creation toward fuller expression? There exists within you a terrible war, a conflict so deeply embedded that you may not even recognize its presence anymore. On one side stands your spiritual aspiration, the part of you that seeks meaning, purpose, and connection to something greater than yourself. On the other side stands your material desire, the natural human longing for comfort, security, beauty, and the freedom that money provides. This internal battlefield has left millions of souls wounded, trapped in a no-man's land between poverty and prosperity, unable to fully embrace either path. You've been taught that these two forces are enemies, that to choose one is to betray the other. This false dichotomy has created a generation of spiritual seekers who sabotage their own success, and successful people who feel spiritually bankrupt. The pain of this conflict manifests in countless ways. Perhaps you've noticed how you unconsciously push away opportunities for advancement, how you feel uncomfortable charging what you're worth, or how you immediately give away any surplus that comes your way. Not from genuine generosity, but from a deep-seated belief that you don't deserve to keep it. You may find yourself in cycles of feast and famine, briefly touching prosperity only to watch it slip through your fingers like water. This isn't bad luck or poor financial planning. It's the direct result of a consciousness that has been programmed to reject its own good. You've been infected with a poverty consciousness that masquerades as spiritual virtue. But here is where the great reversal begins. Thomas Troward, the brilliant judicial mind who brought scientific precision to metaphysical truth, taught something revolutionary. He declared that the originating spirit's fundamental nature is one of infinite increase, endless expansion, and boundless creativity. This spirit doesn't create lack, it creates abundance. It doesn't seek limitation, it seeks fuller expression. And since you are an individualized center of this spirit, your desire for wealth isn't separate from your spiritual nature. It is your spiritual nature seeking to express itself more completely through you. Troward's student Genevieve Behrend took this profound truth and made it accessible to those ready to hear it. Poverty isn't noble. It's a sin against your own divine nature. Thomas Troward was no ordinary philosopher. He was a judge in the Punjab region of India, a man whose entire career was built on logic, evidence, and the precise application of law. When he turned his analytical mind to the great questions of existence, he brought the same rigor that he applied in the courtroom. His conclusions were not mystical fantasies, but logical deductions from observable principles. Genevieve Behrend, recognizing the power of his teachings, became his only personal student, traveling across the world to study under him. She understood that Troward had discovered something extraordinary, not just another philosophy, but a science of mind that could transform the very fabric of reality. This video will arm you with the unshakable conviction of your own right to be rich. Not the nervous hope of someone playing the lottery, but the calm certainty of an heir who knows their inheritance is guaranteed by law. You will learn how to move from a mindset of begging, always asking, pleading, hoping for scraps from the universe's table, to one of a royal heir claiming their divine inheritance with dignity and grace. This isn't about positive thinking or visualization tricks. This is about understanding the fundamental laws that govern the distribution of wealth in the universe and your legitimate place within that system. But I must warn you, there is a subtle mental poison that most people carry, a toxin so deeply embedded in our collective consciousness that even those who consciously desire wealth unconsciously reject it. This poison causes you to push away the very prosperity you seek, to sabotage your success at the moment of breakthrough. In Part 4, I will expose this poison and show you exactly how to eliminate it from your consciousness forever. For now, if you're ready to begin this transformation, I invite you to take the first step. Comment, "I am worthy" below. Not as an affirmation you're trying to believe, but as a declaration of a truth you're ready to remember. This simple act begins the reprogramming of a mind that has forgotten its royal heritage. The originating spirit, what some call God, others call Source, and Troward called the universal mind, is not a static entity sitting on a throne in some distant heaven. It is pure life itself, dynamic, creative, ever-expanding, always seeking fuller and more complete expression of its infinite potential. This is not a religious belief, but an observable principle. Look at any living system in nature. It either grows or it dies. There is no standing still in the universe. A plant reaches for the sun, roots dig deeper for water, cells divide and multiply. This isn't greed or ambition in the human sense. It's the fundamental nature of life itself expressing its inherent drive toward more life, more expression, more becoming. You are not separate from this originating spirit, observing it from the outside like a scientist studying a specimen. You are it, individualized into a specific point of consciousness, but containing within you the same infinite potential, the same creative power, the same inherent drive toward expansion. Think of it this way: the ocean doesn't become less ocean when it expresses itself as a wave. The wave is the ocean expressing itself in a particular form at a particular point. Similarly, you are the infinite expressing itself as you, through you, and most importantly, as you. This isn't metaphor or poetry. This is the fundamental structure of reality as understood by the greatest metaphysical minds. Your desires, therefore, are not random psychological phenomena or culturally conditioned wants. When you desire more money, more resources, more beauty in your life, this isn't your ego talking. It's the life principle itself, expressing through you its nature to expand, to create, to bring forth more good into manifestation. The desire for a beautiful home isn't materialism. It's the same impulse that causes a bird to build an elaborate nest or a spider to weave an intricate web. The desire for financial freedom isn't greed. It's the same force that causes a river to seek the ocean, always moving toward greater expression and freedom of movement. Consider the profound implications of this truth. Every time you suppress your desire for more, every time you tell yourself you should be satisfied with less, every time you feel guilty for wanting abundance, you are literally working against the fundamental force of the universe. You are attempting to dam up the very river of life that seeks to flow through you. This isn't humility or virtue. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of your nature and purpose. You were not created to be a small, constricted channel through which life barely trickles. You were created to be a mighty river, carrying the abundance of the universe into manifestation. This is why Troward was so emphatic that poverty is not a virtue, but a vice. Not in the moral sense of being evil, but in the mechanical sense of being a malfunction. When a pipe is clogged, water cannot flow through it properly. When a mind is clogged with beliefs in limitation, abundance cannot flow through it properly. The universe doesn't punish you for being poor, but poverty itself is its own punishment, because it represents a state of consciousness that is out of alignment with the fundamental nature of reality. It's like trying to make a plant grow by depriving it of sunlight. You're working against nature, not with it. The spiritual path, properly understood, is not about transcending material desires, but about understanding their true source and nature. When you realize that your desire for wealth is actually the divine seeking expression through you, the entire game changes. You're no longer a greedy little ego trying to grab more than your share. You're a channel through which the infinite abundance of the universe seeks to flow into manifestation. This completely dissolves the conflict between spiritual and material aspirations because you realize they were never separate to begin with. But here's where most people get stuck. They intellectually understand this principle, but emotionally still feel unworthy. They can accept that the universe is abundant, that God wants them to prosper, but deep down they don't believe they personally deserve it. This is where the poverty consciousness is most insidious. It doesn't argue against the principle of abundance. It argues against your worthiness to receive it. Yes, it whispers, the universe is infinitely abundant, but not for you. You haven't earned it. You're not good enough. Others deserve it more. This sense of unworthiness is not humility, it's blasphemy against your own divine nature. If you are truly an expression of the infinite, then to declare yourself unworthy is to declare the infinite unworthy. It's like a ray of sunlight declaring it's not really light, or a wave declaring it's not really ocean. The very fact that you exist, that consciousness expresses itself as you, is proof of your worthiness. You don't need to earn the right to be prosperous any more than a flower needs to earn the right to bloom. It's your nature, your purpose, your destiny. The tragedy is that millions of people live their entire lives in unnecessary limitation, not because the universe withholds from them, but because they withhold from themselves. They stand before an infinite banquet, convinced they're only allowed to take crumbs. They have access to an unlimited bank account, but believe they're only authorized to withdraw pennies. This isn't noble suffering. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of who and what they really are. Genevieve Behrend understood this deeply. She saw how Troward's logical, systematic approach could cut through centuries of false conditioning. She recognized that people didn't need more faith. They needed better understanding. They didn't need to believe harder. They needed to see clearer. Once you truly understand that your desire for abundance is the universe itself seeking expression through you, resistance becomes impossible. You wouldn't try to stop your heart from beating or your lungs from breathing. Why would you try to stop the flow of abundance that is equally natural to your being? This is not about convincing yourself of something that isn't true. This is about recognizing something that has always been true, but which you've been trained to deny. Every cell in your body knows how to receive what it needs from the bloodstream. Every plant knows how to receive nutrients from the soil. Only the human mind, with its complex ability to accept false beliefs, can convince itself that it shouldn't receive what the universe is constantly trying to give it. The shift from poverty consciousness to prosperity consciousness is not about becoming someone different. It's about remembering who you've always been. You are not a beggar at the gates of heaven, hoping for mercy. You are an heir to an infinite kingdom with full rights and privileges. The universe isn't reluctantly doling out resources to you. It's eagerly waiting for you to claim what has always been yours. This isn't arrogance or entitlement in the ego sense. It's simply accepting your true identity and living in accordance with it. When you fully grasp this principle, everything changes. Your entire relationship with money transforms. Instead of chasing it, you attract it. Instead of grasping for it, you receive it. Instead of fearing its loss, you trust in its continuous flow. You move from a state of want to a state of have, not in the future, but right now, in consciousness. And since consciousness is the only reality, the external manifestation must follow. This is not wishful thinking. This is the law of mind in action, as precise and reliable as any physical law. Consider Troward's profound analogy of the oak tree, an image so perfect in its simplicity that it shatters centuries of false teaching about humility and spiritual virtue. An acorn contains within itself the complete pattern, the full potential to become a mighty oak. This isn't a possibility or a hope. It's a certainty encoded in its very DNA. Now imagine if that acorn, in some misguided attempt at humility, decided it would be more virtuous to remain small. Picture it refusing to sprout, resisting growth, staying tiny because it believed that taking up space, using resources, reaching toward the sky would be selfish or greedy. We would recognize this immediately as an absurdity, a violation of the acorn's very purpose for existing. The acorn doesn't have the right to remain small. It has the obligation to become the fullest expression of what it is. Its virtue doesn't lie in limitation, but in complete expression. The oak tree that grows tall and broad, that provides shade for creatures, that drops thousands of acorns to create new forests, that converts carbon dioxide to oxygen for all breathing things. This tree is fulfilling its divine purpose precisely by becoming as large and magnificent as possible. The acorn doesn't apologize for the nutrients it draws from the soil. It doesn't feel guilty for the water it pulls from the earth or the sunlight it absorbs. It doesn't look at other acorns and think, I should take less so they can have more. This isn't because the acorn is selfish. It's because the acorn understands something fundamental that humans have forgotten. There is no scarcity in nature's economy. The soil doesn't run out of nutrients because trees grow. The sun doesn't dim because plants photosynthesize. The rain doesn't stop falling because roots drink deeply. You're not different from that acorn except in one tragic way. You have the capacity to deny your own nature. You can choose to stay small, and many do, believing this choice makes them good, humble, spiritual. But Troward saw this for what it really is, not virtue but a sin in the truest sense of the word. The word sin comes from an archery term meaning to miss the mark. When you choose poverty, when you resist abundance, when you refuse to grow into your full potential, you are missing the mark of your own existence. The oak tree that refuses to grow doesn't just harm itself. It deprives the world of all the good it was meant to provide. The shade it would have offered on hot days, the oxygen it would have produced, the beauty it would have added to the landscape, the acorns it would have dropped to feed wildlife and spawn new forests. All of this good is lost when the tree refuses to grow. Similarly, when you refuse to become prosperous, you don't just deprive yourself. You deprive the world of all the good you could do with those resources. Think about this deeply. How many problems could you solve if you had unlimited resources? How many people could you help? How many beautiful things could you create? How much suffering could you alleviate? Your poverty doesn't help anyone. It doesn't make more resources available for others. It simply means less good is being done in the world. The artist who can't afford materials creates no beauty. The inventor who can't fund research creates no innovations. The healer who can't pay rent can't focus on healing. Poverty is not a blessing. It's an obstruction to the flow of good. This is why Troward insisted that the desire for wealth, properly understood, is one of the most spiritual desires you can have. It's the desire to be a bigger channel for good, to have greater capacity to express life, to be able to give more, create more, contribute more. The person who desires millions isn't necessarily more greedy than the person who desires thousands. They may simply have a bigger vision of the good they want to accomplish, a greater understanding of their capacity to be a channel for universal abundance. But here's where the analogy becomes even more powerful. The oak tree doesn't strain to grow. It doesn't effort or struggle. It simply allows the natural process of growth to unfold. It cooperates with the forces of nature rather than fighting against them. The acorn doesn't try to become an oak. It simply doesn't resist becoming one. This is the secret that most people miss in their pursuit of wealth. They think they need to fight for it, to struggle, to compete, to take from others. But this is like an acorn trying to become an oak by stealing soil from other acorns. The truth is much simpler and more elegant. You don't need to create your abundance. It already exists in the infinite field of potential. You simply need to stop resisting it. Every belief in limitation, every feeling of unworthiness, every thought of scarcity is like a shell around the acorn, preventing it from sprouting. Your work is not to make yourself worthy of abundance. You were born worthy. Your work is to remove the false beliefs that prevent you from receiving what the universe is constantly trying to give you. This is what Troward meant when he said that poverty is a sin against your own nature. It's not a moral failing in the sense of being evil or bad. It's a functional failing, like a bird refusing to fly or a fish refusing to swim. You were designed to prosper, engineered for abundance, created to be a channel through which infinite resources flow into manifestation. To choose poverty is to work against your own design, to violate your own nature, to refuse your own purpose. Consider how much energy you expend maintaining poverty. Yes, maintaining it. Because poverty isn't a natural state. It requires constant effort to sustain. You have to continuously reject opportunities, refuse gifts, sabotage success, deny your worth, believe in limitation. It's exhausting. Prosperity, on the other hand, is like the oak tree's growth, natural, effortless, inevitable once you stop resisting it. The universe is constantly trying to prosper you. You have to work hard to stay poor. This completely reverses the conventional understanding. We've been taught that wealth requires hard work and poverty is the default state. But observe nature. Abundance is the default. Look at how many seeds a single plant produces, how many eggs a fish lays, how many stars fill the sky. Scarcity is the exception, not the rule. It only exists where something is blocking the natural flow. In human life, that blockage is almost always mental. False beliefs about worthiness, availability, and the nature of supply. The oak tree doesn't create the sunshine, the rain, or the nutrients in the soil. It simply positions itself to receive them. It sends roots down and branches up, creating the maximum capacity to receive what's already available. This is your true work. Not to create abundance, but to expand your capacity to receive it. Every limiting belief you release is like roots growing deeper. Every expansion of your vision is like branches reaching higher. You're not making abundance happen, you're allowing it to happen. When you truly understand this principle, the entire struggle for wealth disappears. You stop trying to get rich and start allowing richness. You stop chasing money and start attracting it. You stop competing for resources and start creating them from the infinite supply. You move from the competitive plane, where you believe you must take from others, to the creative plane, where you understand that your abundance creates more abundance for all. The transformation from beggar to heir is not a gradual shift, but a complete revolution in identity that must occur in an instant of recognition. You cannot partially be an heir any more than you can partially be pregnant. Either you are or you are not. The beggar consciousness, which most of humanity wears like a second skin, approaches life from a position of lack, always asking, pleading, hoping that perhaps this time the universe will show mercy and grant a small favor. The beggar says, please, and if it be thy will, and I hope, and maybe someday. The beggar's very posture, mental, emotional, and often physical, is one of supplication, of unworthiness, seeking charity from a power perceived as external and capricious. But an heir operates from an entirely different universe of consciousness. An heir doesn't hope, an heir knows. When a legitimate heir to a fortune reaches the age of inheritance, they don't beg the bank to please consider giving them their money. They don't hope the inheritance might be released. They don't wonder if they're worthy of their family fortune. They simply present their credentials and claim what is legally, rightfully, indisputably theirs. There's no emotion in it beyond perhaps quiet satisfaction. It's a transaction based on law, not favor. It's a matter of identity, not worthiness. This is the shift you must make, and it must be complete and absolute. You cannot be an heir in the morning and a beggar in the afternoon. You cannot claim your divine inheritance with one breath and deny it with the next. The universe responds not to your words, but to your consciousness. And consciousness cannot be divided against itself without creating chaos in your external experience. This is why so many people who practice affirmations and visualization fail to see results. They're trying to paint their consciousness over a beggar identity, like putting a silk dress on someone who still believes they belong in rags. The beggar consciousness has been so deeply programmed into humanity that most people don't even recognize it as a choice. From childhood, you were taught to ask permission, to wait your turn, to not take too much, to be grateful for whatever scraps you receive. You were taught that good things come to those who wait, that you must earn everything through struggle, that there's not enough to go around. These teachings created neural pathways in your brain, emotional patterns in your body, and energetic signatures in your field that all vibrate with the frequency of not enough. To become an heir requires what Behrend called the great reversal, a complete flip in how you perceive yourself in relationship to the universe. Instead of seeing yourself as separate from Source, begging for its resources, you must recognize yourself as an extension of Source with full access to its infinite supply. Instead of seeing abundance as something outside yourself that you must somehow convince to come to you, you must recognize it as your natural state that you simply need to stop rejecting. Instead of feeling grateful for crumbs, you must expect the feast that is your birthright. This isn't arrogance, it's accuracy. If Troward's premise is correct, if you truly are an individualized center of the infinite spirit, then heir consciousness isn't pretense. It's simply accepting reality. The arrogance lies in the beggar consciousness, which essentially says to the universe, I know you created me as an expression of your infinite abundance, but I choose to believe I'm separate and lacking. That's the ultimate hubris, to deny your own divine nature, to refuse the identity that Source itself has given you. The practical challenge is that beggar consciousness feels safe because it's familiar. You know how to be poor. You know how to want. You know how to hope and wish and dream. But do you know how to have? Do you know how to receive? Do you know how to stand in the dignity of your true identity without apology or explanation? This is new territory for most, and the ego mind will resist it with every trick at its disposal. It will tell you you're being unrealistic, that you're setting yourself up for disappointment, that you should be more humble. But notice something crucial. The ego mind never questions beggar consciousness. It never says, "Wait, why are you accepting limitation? Why are you choosing struggle? Why are you denying your divine nature?" The ego is perfectly comfortable with limitation because limitation is its domain. In limitation, the ego is needed to figure out how to get by, how to survive, how to compete for scarce resources. In abundance, the ego's job becomes much simpler, merely to manage the flow of good that naturally comes. The ego prefers the complex struggle of poverty to the simple acceptance of abundance. The shift to heir consciousness also requires releasing the strange comfort that comes from being a victim of circumstances. As a beggar, you're never responsible for your condition. It's the economy's fault, or your upbringing, or bad luck, or other people's greed. There's a perverse satisfaction in being able to blame external conditions for your limitation, but an heir can't blame anyone for not claiming their inheritance. If the fortune is sitting in the bank waiting for you and you don't go claim it, whose fault is that? This level of responsibility frightens many people more than poverty itself. Yet this responsibility is also your freedom. If you're truly an heir, then nothing external can prevent you from claiming your inheritance. No economic condition, no personal history, no current circumstance can invalidate your divine right to abundance. The only thing standing between you and your wealth is your own consciousness, and consciousness can be changed in an instant. Not in a year, not in a month, not even in a day. In the instant you truly decide to accept your real identity. The world will test your new identity immediately. The moment you declare yourself an heir, circumstances will arise that invite you to revert to beggar consciousness. A bill will arrive, a problem will emerge, someone will challenge your right to abundance. These are not punishments or signs that you're doing it wrong. They're opportunities to strengthen your new identity. Each time you maintain heir consciousness in the face of apparent limitation, you send a powerful signal to the universe that you're serious about claiming your inheritance. This is where most people fail. They adopt heir consciousness when things are going well, but the moment a challenge appears, they snap back into beggar mode. They say, "See, I knew it wouldn't work. I knew I couldn't really be abundant." But this is like an heir walking away from the bank because there's a line or because they need to fill out some paperwork. The inheritance doesn't disappear because of temporary obstacles. Your divine right to abundance doesn't vanish because of current appearances. The key is to understand that heir consciousness is not about current conditions, but about identity. A prince doesn't stop being a prince because he's temporarily in a foreign land without access to his treasury. He knows who he is, and that knowledge determines how he carries himself, how he makes decisions, how he interacts with the world. He doesn't beg for bread, even if he's temporarily hungry, because he knows his true status. This is the consciousness you must maintain regardless of appearances. When you truly shift from beggar to heir, something remarkable happens. The universe begins to respond to you differently. Opportunities appear that were always there, but which you couldn't see through beggar eyes. People treat you with a respect you didn't know you commanded. Resources flow to you through channels you didn't know existed. This isn't magic, it's law. The universe can only give you what you're willing to receive, and a beggar's cup can only hold so much, while an heir's inheritance is unlimited. The transition period can be disorienting. You may feel like you're pretending, like you're wearing clothes that don't fit. This is normal. You've worn beggar consciousness for so long that heir consciousness feels like a costume. But remember, the costume is what you've been wearing. The heir is who you've always been. You're not putting on a false identity, you're finally taking one off. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're finally stopping pretending to be less than you are. This is why Behrend emphasized the importance of mental discipline during this transition. Your old thought patterns will try to reassert themselves. Your familiar emotional responses will try to pull you back. Your habitual ways of speaking and acting will try to maintain the status quo. You must be vigilant, not in a tense or fearful way, but with the calm determination of someone who has made an irreversible decision. You are an heir. Period. End of discussion. No matter what appears, no matter what anyone says, no matter how you feel in any given moment, you are an heir. The beauty of this shift is that once it's complete, once it's real, once it's integrated into every fiber of your being, it requires no maintenance. An heir doesn't have to constantly remind themselves they're an heir. They don't have to affirm it or visualize it or work at believing it. They simply are it. This is the goal, not to practice heir consciousness, but to embody it so completely that any other way of being becomes unthinkable. The decree of inheritance is not a request, but a formal declaration within the court of your own consciousness, a legal proceeding where you simultaneously act as the plaintiff claiming your rights, the judge recognizing their validity, and the executor ensuring their fulfillment. This is not prayer in the traditional sense of beseeching a distant deity, nor is it affirmation in the sense of trying to convince yourself of something uncertain. This is a precise mental technology based on the understanding that consciousness is the only reality and that what is established in consciousness must, by law, manifest in experience. The three steps work together as a complete system, each one essential and none sufficient alone. Step 1. Acknowledge the source. Before you can claim an inheritance, you must establish its existence and your relationship to it. Sit in stillness, not the fidgety stillness of someone waiting for something to happen, but the profound stillness of someone preparing to conduct serious business. Close your eyes not to shut out the world, but to turn your attention to the greater reality within. In this stillness, recognize with absolute clarity that there exists one universal substance, one infinite source, one inexhaustible treasury from which all wealth, all supply, all manifestation springs. This is not a theory to be believed, but a fact to be recognized, as real and present as the air you breathe. This universal substance is not separate from you, observing you from a distance, deciding whether to bless or withhold. You are immersed in it like a fish in the ocean, made of it like a wave is made of water. It is the very fabric of your being, the substance of your consciousness, the foundation of your existence. Every atom of your body, every thought in your mind, every feeling in your heart is composed of this one substance, organized into the specific pattern that is you. When you truly recognize this, not intellectually but experientially, you understand that seeking supply outside yourself is like a wave seeking water, absurd and unnecessary. Feel into this recognition until it becomes visceral, until your whole being resonates with the truth of it. You are not separate from Source begging for its resources. You are Source, individualized into a specific point of consciousness, with full access to all that Source is and has. This is not a metaphor or a nice spiritual concept. This is the fundamental structure of reality. The same substance that forms the stars forms you. The same intelligence that governs the universe governs your affairs. The same power that creates worlds is at your disposal. Let this recognition sink deep into your consciousness until there is no doubt, no question, no uncertainty about your relationship to the infinite. Step 2. State your right. Now comes the moment of formal declaration, the legal claiming of what is yours by divine right. This is not a timid suggestion or a hopeful wish, but a clear, firm, dignified statement of fact. Speak within your consciousness with the authority of someone who knows the law and knows their rights under that law. Say with complete conviction, I am an heir to this infinite kingdom. It is my divine and inalienable right to be rich, to be successful, and to express life at the highest possible level. My desire for wealth is the desire of the Spirit to express itself more fully through me. Let each word carry the weight of legal precedent, the force of cosmic law. You are not asking for permission, you are not negotiating terms, you are stating facts as immutable as the law of gravity. Your right to abundance is not based on your personal worthiness, your past actions, or your current circumstances. It is based on your identity as an expression of the infinite, and that identity cannot be revoked, diminished, or questioned. When you state your right, you are not trying to convince the universe of something new, you are acknowledging something that has always been true. This declaration must be made with a particular quality of consciousness, not aggressive or demanding in the ego sense, but firm and clear in the legal sense. Imagine a legitimate heir walking into a bank with all the proper documentation. They don't shout or plead or argue. They simply present their credentials and state their business. There's a quiet dignity to it, a calm certainty that requires no emphasis because the facts speak for themselves. This is the consciousness you must embody as you state your right to abundance. The power of this declaration lies not in the words themselves, but in the consciousness behind them. You must feel the truth of your heirship in every cell of your body. You must know it with the same certainty that you know your own name. This is not about convincing yourself of something doubtful, but about declaring something certain. The difference is crucial. When you try to convince yourself, you're admitting doubt. When you declare what you know, you're establishing law in your consciousness. Step 3. Graciously accept. This final step is perhaps the most subtle and the most powerful. After acknowledging the source and stating your right, you must now receive what is already yours. This is not the excited acceptance of someone who has won the lottery, nor the grateful acceptance of someone who has been given charity. This is the gracious acceptance of an aristocrat receiving what has always belonged to them. There's no surprise in it, because you expected nothing less. There's no giddiness, because this is simply the restoration of natural order. Feel into the feeling of already having, not the feeling of about to have or hoping to have or believing you will have, the feeling of having right now, in this moment. Your inheritance is not coming to you from somewhere else. It's emerging from within you because it has always been there. The external manifestation is simply the visible expression of an inner reality that already exists. You are not waiting for anything because waiting implies separation between you and your good. You are simply allowing what is already yours to become visible in your experience. This acceptance must be accompanied by profound gratitude, but not the gratitude of a beggar thankful for scraps. Rather, the gratitude of recognition, the joy of understanding, the appreciation of law. You are grateful that the universe is structured in such a way that your good is guaranteed. You are grateful that law is dependable, that consciousness is creative, that your inheritance is secured by principles more reliable than human promises. This gratitude is not an attempt to earn your good through proper appreciation. It's the natural response of someone who truly understands their position. The post technique. Now comes the crucial part that most people miss. After performing this decree, you must go about your day with a new sense of dignity, a different quality of being. You are not the same person who sat down to do this exercise. You have claimed your inheritance, stated your rights, accepted your good. This is done. Complete. Finished. There's nothing more to do except live from this new consciousness. Make decisions from abundance, not lack. Speak from prosperity, not poverty. Act from certainty, not hope. This doesn't mean you pretend current limitations don't exist. If your bank account shows a small number, you don't deny that fact, but you understand it as a temporary condition, like a prince temporarily without access to his treasury. The external condition doesn't determine your consciousness. Your consciousness determines how you respond to the condition. You make decisions based on who you are, not on what currently appears. This is not financial irresponsibility, it's consciousness responsibility. When you go to work, you work not as someone trying to earn enough to survive, but as someone managing one channel through which your abundance flows. When you pay bills, you pay them not with resentment at the reduction of scarce resources, but with appreciation for the circulation of infinite supply. When you see something you desire, you don't immediately think, "I can't afford that," but rather, "That or something better is mine by right of consciousness." Every thought, word, and action proceeds from the consciousness of an heir, not a beggar. This new way of being will feel unnatural at first. Your old patterns will try to reassert themselves dozens of times each day. You'll catch yourself thinking lack thoughts, speaking limitation words, making fear-based decisions. When this happens, don't berate yourself or think you've failed. Simply return to the consciousness of the heir. Remind yourself of who you are. Re-establish yourself in the truth. This is not a one-time event, but a new way of living that becomes more natural with practice. The key is consistency of consciousness. You cannot be an heir for 10 minutes during your morning decree and a beggar for the rest of the day. The decree is not a magical ritual that works regardless of your consciousness the other 23 hours and 50 minutes. The decree is a formal establishment of consciousness that must then be maintained throughout your daily experience. Every moment is an opportunity to either reinforce your heir consciousness or slip back into beggar thinking. Watch how the universe begins to respond to your new consciousness. Notice how opportunities appear, how resources flow, how problems solve themselves. Don't be attached to how your abundance manifests. That's beggar consciousness trying to control the process. An heir doesn't dictate to the bank how to manage the money. They simply receive it. Your job is to maintain the consciousness. The universe's job is to handle the details of manifestation. Remember, this is not about forcing the universe to give you something it's withholding. This is about stopping your rejection of what it's constantly trying to give you. Every moment of heir consciousness removes another barrier to the flow of your good. Every decision made from abundance creates more abundance. Every thought of prosperity generates more prosperity. You are not making abundance happen. You are allowing it to happen by being someone who can receive it. The most insidious poison in human consciousness, the one that destroys more dreams and creates more poverty than all external circumstances combined, is the belief in the competitive mind. The deeply embedded conviction that for you to win, someone else must lose. This is the great lie that has kept humanity in chains of limitation for millennia, the false premise that turns life into a zero-sum game where every gain requires an equal loss somewhere else. This poison is so subtle, so pervasive, so seemingly logical, that even those who consciously reject it often find it operating beneath their awareness, sabotaging their prosperity at the very moment of breakthrough. The competitive mind sees the world as a pie of fixed size. If you take a larger slice, someone else must accept a smaller one. If you become rich, someone else must become poor. If you succeed, someone else must fail. This perspective seems to be confirmed by surface appearances. There are only so many jobs, so many customers, so many dollars in circulation at any given moment. The competitive mind looks at these appearances and concludes that life is a battle for scarce resources, that success requires defeating others, that abundance for one means lack for another. But Troward saw through this illusion with the clarity of a trained legal mind examining evidence. He recognized that the competitive mind operates only on the plane of existing forms, fighting over what already is, blind to the infinite realm of what could be. It's like people fighting over existing loaves of bread, never realizing they could plant wheat and create unlimited new loaves. The competitive mind can only rearrange existing wealth. It cannot create new wealth. It can only redistribute what is. It cannot bring forth what isn't yet. This is why the competitive mind creates guilt, especially in spiritually sensitive people. Deep in your soul, you know that causing another's impoverishment for your enrichment is wrong. Your inner being recoils from the idea of success built on someone else's failure. So when you believe that getting rich requires taking from others, your own consciousness sabotages your success. You unconsciously reject opportunities, undercharge for your services, give away your surplus, all to avoid the guilt of imagining you're impoverishing others. The creative mind operates on an entirely different plane. It doesn't seek to take what exists, but to bring into existence what doesn't yet exist. It doesn't compete for current resources, but creates new resources from the formless substance that fills all space. When you operate from the creative mind, your success doesn't diminish anyone else's opportunities. It creates more opportunities for everyone. Your wealth doesn't impoverish others. It enriches the entire system. You're not taking a bigger piece of the pie, you're making the pie bigger for everyone. Consider how this works in practical terms. When you create a successful business from the creative plane, you're not taking customers from other businesses. You're creating value that didn't exist before, attracting new money into circulation, providing employment, paying taxes that fund public services, inspiring others to create their own success. When you become wealthy through creation rather than competition, you become a fountain of prosperity that enriches everyone around you. You prove that abundance is possible. You demonstrate the principles of creation. You become evidence that the universe is not limited. The second fatal mistake is false humility, that peculiar form of dishonesty where you pretend to want less than you actually want, where you say, "I don't need much," while secretly yearning for more. This false humility is not virtue, but a form of lying, to yourself, to others, and to the universe. It sends a contradictory signal that confuses the creative process. You're simultaneously saying, "I want," and "I don't want," creating a kind of static in consciousness that prevents clear manifestation. False humility often masquerades as spiritual virtue. You've been taught that good people, spiritual people, enlightened people don't care about material things, so you pretend not to care. You say things like, "Money isn't important to me," or "I just want enough to get by," or "I'm not materialistic." But underneath these statements, your true desire burns unacknowledged. You do want more. You do care about material comfort. You would love to have beautiful things. This split between what you say and what you feel creates an internal war that exhausts your creative energy. The universe responds to what you are, not what you pretend to be. When you practice false humility, you're essentially telling the universe, "I'm going to pretend I don't want abundance, but I secretly hope you'll give it to me anyway." This is like planting seeds while telling the earth you don't really want plants to grow. The mixed message creates mixed results. Periods of flow followed by sudden stops, money that comes but doesn't stay, opportunities that appear but somehow never quite manifest. True humility is not about wanting less, but about recognizing the source of all good. True humility says, "I am a channel for infinite abundance. The good that flows through me comes from the infinite source, not from my ego. I can desire greatly because I know the greatness comes through me, not from me." This kind of humility is compatible with enormous wealth because it recognizes wealth as a flow of universal good, not a personal possession to be hoarded. The third fatal mistake is condemning wealth itself, harboring resentment, jealousy, or moral judgment toward those who have achieved financial success. This is perhaps the most obviously self-defeating pattern, yet millions engage in it daily. They look at wealthy people and think or say things like, "They must be greedy as nobody needs that much and they probably got it dishonestly," or "Rich people are selfish." Every such thought is a vote against your own prosperity, a declaration to the universe that you don't want to become what you condemn. You cannot attract a state that you inwardly condemn. This is not a moral principle, but a mechanical one. Consciousness creates by identification. You become what you consistently identify with, and you cannot identify with what you judge as wrong or evil. So when you condemn wealth, you're creating an impenetrable barrier between yourself and prosperity. You're essentially saying, "I declare wealth to be bad, but please give it to me anyway." The universe cannot process this contradiction. The condemnation often comes from inherited beliefs about money being the root of all evil, about rich people being unable to enter heaven, about poverty being somehow more pure or spiritual. These beliefs, planted in childhood and reinforced by society, create an automatic rejection of wealth, even as you consciously pursue it. You might work hard, save money, invest wisely, but underneath it all, a part of you believes that becoming wealthy would make you a bad person. So at crucial moments, you unconsciously sabotage your own success to remain good. The antidote is to see wealth as a good and noble thing when it comes from the creative plane. Wealth that is created, not taken, that enriches rather than impoverishes, that expands rather than limits. This is divine wealth, and it deserves celebration, not condemnation. When you see someone who has created wealth through service, through innovation, Through adding value to the world, celebrate them. See them as evidence of what's possible, as proof of universal abundance, as examples to be emulated rather than condemned. Life itself is biased in your favor, though this truth runs so counter to conventional thinking that most minds reject it immediately as fantasy or delusion. Yet Behrend understood this as the master key that unlocks all doors, the fundamental recognition that transforms struggle into flow. The entire universe, from the smallest subatomic particle to the vast galaxies, is structured to support your fullest expression, your complete success, your absolute prosperity. This is not wishful thinking or metaphysical speculation. It is the logical conclusion of understanding your true relationship to the infinite. Consider the profound implications of this truth. If you are indeed an individualized expression of the infinite life principle, then the entire universe is essentially supporting itself when it supports you. You are not a separate entity trying to extract resources from a reluctant cosmos. You are the cosmos expressing itself at a particular point, and your success is its success, your prosperity is its prosperity, your joy is its joy. The universe can no more work against you than your body can work against your own heart. Every atom, every force, every law is conspiring to bring about your highest good, because your highest good is the universe expressing its own nature. The resistance you experience, the obstacles you encounter, the limitations you perceive, none of these come from the universe opposing you. They come from your own consciousness opposing itself, from believing in separation where there is only unity, from accepting limitation where there is only limitlessness. The universe is constantly trying to give you everything, but you can only receive what your consciousness can accept. It's like standing under a waterfall with a thimble. The limitation isn't in the supply, but in your capacity to receive. This is why Behrend emphasized that you are the only one who can refuse the gift. The universe cannot force abundance upon you any more than you can force someone to accept a gift they're determined to reject. Free will means you have the power to choose limitation even while swimming in an ocean of limitlessness. You can choose poverty while surrounded by infinite wealth. You can choose struggle while being offered ease. This is not a flaw in the system, it's the very foundation of creative consciousness. Without the ability to choose limitation, the choice of abundance would have no meaning. But here's what changes everything. Once you truly understand that life is for you, not against you, resistance becomes impossible to maintain. It's like trying to hold your breath once you realize the air is pure and free and abundant. Why would you? The only reason you ever resisted abundance was because you believed accepting it would cause harm, to yourself, to others, to your spiritual development. But when you understand that accepting abundance is accepting life itself, that prosperity is the natural expression of the life principle, resistance dissolves like ice in warm water. The universe's bias in your favor manifests in countless ways once you stop fighting it. Synchronicities multiply. The right people appear at the right time. Information you need comes from unexpected sources. Opportunities present themselves with perfect timing. Problems that seemed insurmountable suddenly reveal simple solutions. This isn't magic or coincidence. It's the natural result of aligning yourself with the flow of life, instead of against it. You're no longer swimming upstream, exhausting yourself fighting the current. You're flowing with the river of life toward your natural destination of complete expression. This bias extends to every area of your existence. Your body is biased toward health, constantly working to heal, repair, and maintain itself. Your mind is biased toward growth, constantly seeking to learn, understand, and expand. Your spirit is biased toward joy, constantly seeking experiences that affirm the goodness of existence. When you align with these natural biases instead of fighting them, life becomes remarkably easier. You're working with the grain of the universe instead of against it. The practical application of this principle transforms how you approach every situation. When facing a challenge, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How is this happening for me?" Instead of seeing obstacles as proof that the universe is against you, you see them as the universe's way of strengthening you, preparing you for greater good, redirecting you toward something better. Every apparent setback becomes a setup for a comeback. Every closed door becomes a redirection toward an open one. This doesn't mean you become passive or naive. Understanding that life is for you doesn't mean everything will always be easy or pleasant. A personal trainer is for you, but they still make you do difficult exercises. A teacher is for you, but they still give you challenging assignments. The universe is for you, but it still presents you with growth opportunities disguised as problems. The difference is in understanding the intent behind the experience. When you know the universe is supporting your growth rather than punishing you, you engage with challenges differently. The bridge between ancient wisdom and modern psychology reveals itself most clearly in Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that pyramid of human development that inadvertently proves what the masters always knew. Material security is not separate from spiritual development, but foundational to it. Maslow, approaching from pure scientific observation rather than metaphysical speculation, discovered that human beings cannot reach what he called self-actualization, the full expression of their potential, their creativity, their unique gifts, until their basic needs for safety, security, and resources are met. This isn't spiritual theory, but psychological fact, validated through decades of research and observation. Consider what Maslow's research actually demonstrates. When a person's basic needs are unmet, when they're worried about food, shelter, or safety, their consciousness contracts to survival mode. The brain literally changes its functioning, prioritizing immediate threats over long-term growth. Creativity diminishes, vision narrows, the capacity for abstract thinking, for spiritual contemplation, for artistic expression. All of these higher functions are suppressed in favor of basic survival mechanisms. The person who is worried about paying rent cannot fully engage in solving larger problems or creating beautiful things. This scientific finding demolishes the romantic notion that poverty somehow enhances spiritual or creative development. The starving artist in the garret, the enlightened beggar, the holy person who owns nothing. These archetypes may make for compelling stories, but they don't reflect psychological reality. The artist who can't afford materials creates less art. The philosopher who's worried about their next meal thinks less clearly. The spiritual seeker, who's anxious about basic security, has less mental and emotional space for genuine spiritual exploration. Maslow's hierarchy provides a scientific framework for understanding why financial abundance is not just compatible with spiritual development, but necessary for it. The highest level of human development, what Maslow called self-actualization, and what others might call enlightenment, self-realization, or full expression, requires a stable foundation. You cannot build a cathedral on quicksand. You cannot reach for the stars while sinking in mud. The material foundation doesn't compete with spiritual development, it enables it. This connects directly to Troward's principle that you are here to express life fully. Maslow's research shows that full expression is literally impossible without material security. The person operating from scarcity consciousness, worried about basic needs, cannot access their full creative potential. Their consciousness is too contracted, their energy too focused on survival, their mental resources too consumed with immediate concerns. They may have moments of transcendence, flashes of insight, but sustained higher functioning requires a stable base. The implications are profound and practical. When you secure your financial foundation, you're not being materialistic, you're creating the necessary conditions for your highest expression. When you ensure your material needs are abundantly met, you're not being greedy, you're freeing your consciousness for its true work. When you build wealth, you're not moving away from spiritual development. You're creating the platform from which genuine spiritual development becomes possible. This scientific validation extends beyond individual psychology to social observation. Throughout history, the great flowerings of art, philosophy, science, and spiritual development have occurred not in times of poverty, but in times of prosperity. The Renaissance wasn't born from scarcity, but from the wealth of Italian city-states. The golden age of Greece emerged from economic prosperity. The explosion of innovation in the modern era correlates directly with increased material abundance. When societies secure their material foundation, their creative and spiritual expression flourishes. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Maslow found that self-actualized people, those who had reached the highest level of development, often had what he called peak experiences, moments of transcendence, unity, and cosmic consciousness. These experiences, which mystics have described for millennia, were most common among those who had satisfied their lower needs and were operating from abundance rather than scarcity. The spiritual experiences that many seek through deprivation come more naturally to those operating from fullness. This doesn't mean wealth automatically creates enlightenment. There are plenty of wealthy people who remain stuck at lower levels of development, using their resources merely for increased consumption rather than higher expression. But it does mean that poverty is not a shortcut to spirituality. The path of deprivation doesn't lead to enlightenment, but to contraction. The path of abundance, properly understood and utilized, creates the space for genuine spiritual development. The research also reveals something crucial about the nature of desire. Maslow found that as each level of needs is satisfied, new desires emerge. This isn't greed or dissatisfaction, it's the natural progression of human development. When you're secure in your basic needs, you naturally desire belonging and love. When you have belonging, you naturally desire achievement and recognition. When you have achievement, you naturally desire self-actualization. And beyond self-actualization, Maslow later added, lies self-transcendence, the desire to serve something greater than yourself. This progression perfectly mirrors what Troward taught about the nature of life, always seeking fuller expression. Your desire for more isn't a character flaw. It's the life principle itself moving you toward greater expression. The key is understanding that more doesn't just mean more money or things. As your material needs are met, your desires naturally evolve toward higher expressions. More creativity, more service, more contribution, more spiritual development. But this evolution requires the foundation of material security. The bridge to neuroscience adds another layer of validation. Modern brain imaging shows that financial stress activates the amygdala, the brain's fear center, while suppressing activity in the prefrontal cortex, where higher-order thinking, creativity, and spiritual experience occur. Chronic financial stress literally rewires the brain for survival rather than thrival. Conversely, financial security allows the brain to maintain what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the ability to think creatively, see possibilities, and access higher states of consciousness. This scientific understanding reframes the entire conversation about wealth and spirituality. Seeking financial abundance isn't a distraction from your spiritual path. It's preparation for it. Building wealth isn't moving away from higher consciousness. It's creating the neurological conditions that support it. Ensuring your prosperity isn't selfish. It's practical wisdom based on understanding how human development actually works. The validation extends to quantum physics, where researchers have discovered that observation affects reality at the most fundamental level. The observer effect in quantum mechanics demonstrates scientifically what mystics have always known. Consciousness plays a fundamental role in creating reality. Your observation, your attention, your consciousness literally influences the behavior of particles at the quantum level. This provides a scientific framework for understanding how consciousness creates experience, how your mental state influences your material reality. The principles of resonance and entrainment in physics also validate the metaphysical law of attraction. Objects vibrating at similar frequencies naturally synchronize. This isn't mysticism, it's measurable physics. When you maintain a consciousness of abundance, you literally vibrate at the frequency of abundance, naturally attracting and synchronizing with abundant circumstances. This is science, not superstition. The field of epigenetics adds yet another layer of validation. Research shows that your mental and emotional states influence gene expression. Chronic stress from financial insecurity can activate genes associated with inflammation, disease, and aging, while states of security and abundance can activate genes associated with health, vitality, and longevity. Your consciousness literally influences your biology. Prosperity isn't just good for your bank account, it's good for your cells. The convergence of all these scientific disciplines points to the same truth that Troward articulated through pure logic. Prosperity is not separate from spiritual development, but integral to it. The universe is structured to support your abundance because abundance is necessary for your full expression. This isn't wishful thinking. It's the conclusion reached independently by psychology, neuroscience, quantum physics, and epigenetics. Science and spirituality are not in conflict about prosperity. They're in complete agreement. The Renaissance stands as history's most powerful testament to the relationship between wealth and human greatness, a period when the marriage of prosperity and genius produced an explosion of beauty, innovation, and spiritual expression that still defines our conception of human potential. Consider Michelangelo, perhaps the greatest artist who ever lived, whose divine genius required the wealth of the Medici family and the Catholic Church to manifest. Without their patronage, without their vast material resources, the Sistine Chapel ceiling would not exist, David would never have been carved, the Pietà would remain unimagined. His transcendent art, which has elevated millions of souls toward the divine, was enabled by wealth, not hindered by it. This is not an isolated example, but a pattern that repeats throughout history. Leonardo da Vinci required the patronage of wealthy dukes to pursue his investigations into anatomy, engineering, and art. His notebooks, filled with inventions centuries ahead of their time, were possible because he was freed from the daily struggle for survival. The wealth of his patrons didn't corrupt his genius, it liberated it. Every flying machine he designed, every anatomical drawing he created, every masterpiece he painted was made possible by the material resources that gave him the freedom to explore the full range of his consciousness. The pattern extends beyond individual artists to entire civilizations. Athens in its golden age produced Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, not despite its wealth, but because of it. The prosperity of the city-state created the leisure necessary for philosophical contemplation, the resources for education, the cultural environment where profound questions could be explored. The foundations of Western philosophy, the very thoughts that have shaped human consciousness for millennia, emerged from abundance, not scarcity. Poverty didn't create these philosophers, prosperity did. Consider the bitter irony of those who condemn wealth while surrounded by its fruits. The beautiful buildings they admire were built with wealth. The books they read were published with wealth. The technology they used to spread their anti-wealth messages was created with wealth. The very platforms from which they preach the virtue of poverty were constructed with the material resources they claim to disdain. They are like people condemning water while swimming in the ocean, denying the very element that sustains them. The social proof extends to our present moment. Look at who is solving humanity's greatest challenges. It's not those in poverty, but those with resources. The vaccines that save millions of lives require billions in research funding. The technologies that connect humanity require vast material resources to develop and deploy. The environmental solutions being developed to save our planet demand enormous financial investment. Poverty solves nothing. Poverty creates nothing. Poverty advances nothing. It is wealth, properly directed, that moves humanity forward. But here's the crucial distinction that must be understood. We're talking about wealth created from the creative plane, not the competitive plane. The Medici wealth that funded the Renaissance came largely from banking, from facilitating commerce, enabling trade, creating value through financial services. They weren't taking wealth. They were creating systems that generated wealth. Their prosperity created more prosperity for others. Florence became rich not by conquering and pillaging, but by creating, innovating, and serving. This is the model for conscious wealth creation. When you become prosperous through genuine service, through creating value, through solving problems, through expressing your unique gifts, your wealth becomes a force for universal good. You become like the Medicis, able to fund not just your own full expression, but enabling others to express their genius as well. Your prosperity becomes a fountain from which countless streams of good can flow. The anecdotal evidence from our own time is overwhelming. The entrepreneurs who create revolutionary technologies, the investors who fund world-changing research, the philanthropists who solve global problems, They all demonstrate that wealth and spiritual expression are not opposites, but partners. When you have resources, you can focus on higher purposes. When you're financially free, you can pursue your true calling. When you're prosperous, you can lift others to prosperity. The synthesis of everything you've learned crystallizes into a single revolutionary understanding. Your desire for wealth is not separate from your spiritual nature, but is your spiritual nature seeking its fullest expression through you. This is not greed, masquerading as spirituality or materialism dressed in cosmic clothing. This is the fundamental recognition that the same force that drives a seed to become a tree, that pushes a stream to become a river, that compels consciousness to know itself more fully, this same sacred impulse is what you experience as the desire for more resources, more beauty, more capacity to express life. When you fully grasp this truth, the last vestiges of guilt dissolve like shadows exposed to light. You understand that every dollar you attract, every resource you accumulate, every beautiful thing you acquire is not taken from the world's limited supply, but created from the infinite potential that surrounds and pervades all things. You are not depleting the universe's treasury, you are demonstrating its inexhaustible nature. You are not proving scarcity, you are proving abundance. Your prosperity becomes a testament to the truth that there is more than enough for everyone. The power of this synthesis extends beyond mere intellectual understanding into a complete transformation of your energetic signature. When guilt dissolves, resistance dissolves with it. When shame evaporates, the channels of reception open fully. When the internal civil war between spiritual aspiration and material desire ends, all that energy previously wasted in conflict becomes available for creation. You stop fighting yourself and start expressing yourself. You stop apologizing for your existence and start celebrating it. This alignment of inner forces creates what can only be described as a state of grace, not the passive grace of accepting whatever comes, but the active grace of co-creating with the universe. You become a conscious participant in the endless creative process of life, neither forcing nor resisting, neither grasping nor rejecting, but flowing with the infinite intelligence that knows how to transform desire into manifestation, potential into actual, invisible into visible. You become an instrument through which the universe plays its symphony of abundance. The dissolution of self-sabotage is perhaps the most practical and immediate benefit of this synthesis. Those unconscious patterns that have kept you in cycles of limitation, the tendency to undercharge for your services, to give away your surplus from guilt rather than joy, to retreat just when breakthrough is imminent, these patterns lose their power over you. They were never random or mysterious. They were the logical result of believing that your gain meant someone else's loss. Once that belief is thoroughly uprooted and replaced with the understanding of infinite supply, self-sabotage becomes literally impossible. You cannot sabotage what you know to be infinitely renewable. Stop apologizing for your ambition. It is the holiest part of you, the most direct expression of the divine impulse that created the universe itself. Your ambition is not ego run amok, but life-seeking fuller expression. Your drive to achieve, to grow, to expand, to prosper, this is the same force that lifted humanity from caves to cities, from ignorance to knowledge, from limitation to possibility. To apologize for this drive is to apologize for the force that creates worlds, that paints sunsets, that composes symphonies, that writes poetry, that loves without limit. You were not born to live a small, constricted life, shuffling through your days in quiet desperation, accepting whatever crumbs fall from the table of existence. You were born to feast at the banquet of life, to drink deeply from the fountain of experience, to express the magnificent potential that lies dormant within you, like a seed waiting for the right conditions to explode into glorious manifestation. Every cell in your body knows this. Every atom of your being vibrates with this truth. Only your conditioned mind, infected with the virus of limitation, argues for smallness. You are an heir to an infinite kingdom, not in some distant afterlife, but here, now, in this moment, in this incarnation. The kingdom is not coming, it is here. The inheritance is not promised, it is available. The abundance is not potential, it is present. All that stands between you and your birthright is your own consciousness, your own acceptance, your own willingness to stop playing small and start playing the magnificent game you came here to play. This is not arrogance or presumption. This is simply accepting the truth of your identity. Stand tall in this knowing, not the artificial tallness of ego trying to appear bigger than others, but the natural stature of someone who has remembered who they are. Stand with the dignity of divine heritage, the confidence of cosmic backing, the assurance of universal support. Let your very presence communicate that you are not here to beg for scraps, but to claim your inheritance. Let your energy field broadcast the frequency of abundance so clearly that opportunities magnetize to you, resources flow to you, people want to support you. State your claim with the clarity of someone who knows the law and knows their rights under it. Not aggressively, not desperately, but with the calm certainty of established fact. I am prosperous is not a hope or a wish or an affirmation you're trying to believe. It's a statement of identity as fundamental as I am conscious or I exist. Your claim to abundance is not based on what you've done or haven't done, on what you deserve or don't deserve, but on who you are as an expression of the infinite. Graciously accept the abundance that is your birthright, with the same naturalness that you accept the air you breathe. You don't thank every molecule of oxygen for entering your lungs. You simply breathe and expect the air to be there. Similarly, accept prosperity as your natural state, not with giddy excitement or surprised gratitude, but with the calm appreciation of someone receiving what was always theirs. This is not taking anything for granted. It's taking everything as granted, understanding that the universe grants you abundance as naturally as the sun grants light. It is time to be the magnificent expression of life you were always meant to be. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are right, not when you feel ready, but now. Time is not waiting for you to overcome your hesitation. Opportunity is not pausing while you wrestle with doubt. The universe is in constant motion, always creating, always expressing, always becoming more, and you are either consciously participating in this cosmic dance or unconsciously resisting it. There is no neutral ground. You are either expanding or contracting, either expressing or suppressing, either claiming your magnificence or denying it. The Heir's Decree challenge stands before you now as more than an exercise. It is an initiation into a new order of being, a 7-day journey that will fundamentally alter your relationship with abundance forever. For 7 consecutive mornings, you will rise not as a beggar hoping for mercy, but as an heir claiming your inheritance. You will perform the 3-step decree of inheritance with the solemnity of a coronation, the precision of a legal proceeding, the reverence of a sacred ritual. This is not about manifesting money in a week. Such thinking still comes from scarcity consciousness, from the belief that you need to make something happen that isn't already true. The true goal of these 7 days is far more profound: to completely dissolve the inner feeling of unworthiness that has been your constant companion, that subtle sense that you don't really deserve abundance, that prosperity is for others but not for you. This feeling is so familiar you might not even recognize it as a choice. It feels like truth, like reality, like just the way things are. But in 7 days of consistent practice, you will expose this feeling for what it really is. A lie you've believed for so long that it feels like truth. Watch how this shift in identity changes everything. Notice how you begin to carry yourself differently, not with the artificial confidence of someone trying to appear successful, but with the natural dignity of someone who knows their worth. Observe how your posture changes. Your shoulders naturally pull back, your chin lifts slightly, your chest opens. This isn't conscious effort. It's the automatic result of remembering who you are. Your body knows how an heir stands, how an heir moves, how an heir occupies space. It has always known. It was just waiting for your consciousness to remember. Pay attention to how your decisions transform. Where you once would have chosen from scarcity, you now choose from abundance. Where you once would have settled for less, you now hold out for what you truly desire. Where you once would have apologized for taking up space, you now graciously accept your right to be here, to prosper, to express fully. These aren't forced changes that you have to remember to implement. They arise naturally from your shifted identity, as automatic as breathing. Notice especially how your peace of mind deepens. The constant anxiety about money, that background static of financial worry that has hummed beneath your consciousness for so long, begins to quiet. Not because your bank account has changed, it might not have yet, but because your relationship to supply has changed. You know where your abundance comes from now. You know it's not dependent on your job, the economy, or external circumstances. You know it flows from an infinite source through your consciousness into manifestation. This knowing brings a peace that surpasses understanding. If you are ready to claim your divine inheritance, if you are ready to stop playing small and start expressing the magnificence that you are, then subscribe to the Master's Legacy. This is not just another YouTube channel offering quick fixes and shallow promises. This is a repository of the deepest wisdom, the most profound truths, the most powerful technologies of consciousness that humanity has discovered. Each video is a doorway to greater understanding, each teaching a key to unlock more of your infinite potential. Your kingdom awaits, not in some distant future, not in some other place, but here, now, in this moment of decision. The only question is, are you ready to claim it?